Hello. So, I was on Facebook this morning and I got my hair colored recently. You could probably see it's darker. Um, this another bullshit article popped up in my news feed, but this time it was about ADHD and what are apparently three telltale signs of ADHD. And the first one, I'm really convinced that they're trying to medicate the entire population here. And part of the reason I think they're almost targeting abuse survivors or abuse victims, and it's triggering for me also because my mother my whole life has tried to pathologize me into any category she could, so any trait that I possess as a person has been used against me in some way, so this is really triggering for me. Um, but it was this bullshit article. And another thing too is like you read through the comments on these things and it is absolutely sickening how easily the society buys into it and how easily brainwashed people are. And no one really looks at the article and is like, "Wait a minute, what kind of bullshit is this?" But so this is why I'm going to do it right now. So the first quote unquote telltale sign of ADHD, they go on to explain how attention deficit is a misnomer, and what it really is an attention inconsistency, because people with ADHD have a really easy time paying attention to things that interest them, but have a harder time paying attention to things that don't interest them. So I'm reading this, I'm like, who doesn't that describe? Like, that's everybody. That is everybody. Like, I mean, some people can get over like a motivational hump more easily with things they're not interested in, and some people get really lazy. I understand that, but it does describe everybody, at least to some extent. You're really interested in things, so you're very motivated, and then when you're not, you're less motivated. So that describes everybody. And another thing they were talking about is anxiety responses, that people with ADHD have a harder time falling asleep because they can't turn their mind off, or due to residual anxiety during the day, which is supposedly a side effect of ADHD. But and it might be, but that could be a side effect of a million things. Well, abuse being one of them. Other anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar. Another reason why I mean, if you're a psychiatrist or in that field, I don't mean to offend anybody personally, but I do kind of question the field as a whole because there's just way too much gray area. Like, my mother's tried to get me diagnosed as certain things in the past, and I don't know if it was a specific diagnosis she was going for, but she would fill out questionnaires on me and like with like multiple choice items and like rip me apart and then show me what she was filling out on me. So her goal, not only to get me labeled, but to rip me apart to my face and destroy my self-esteem even more than it already was. But there must have been like 80 or 100 signs or traits that could be symptoms of multiple disorders. So the problem that I have is like something is supposed to be a telltale sign of one disorder, but then it overlaps with 5 other disorders. So again, like, I'm kind of scratching my head with that. And then a lot of, anytime you try to diagnose somebody and there's that many bullet points, like literally my mom was filling out, it must have been like 80 questions. So like, how does that not apply to everybody to some extent? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think she was trying to get me labeled as ADHD at some point, just because it's not that hard to diagnose somebody with it, because like for what I just said, there's so much gray area and it's so broad and can apply to everybody. But I think she was convinced at one point too that I had like a mild form of Asperger's, because she was so obsessed with my lack of social skills and how this everything about me was a sign that something was wrong with me neurologically. So that's another thing too, is Asperger's syndrome. Like 10 years ago, it was like the diagnosis du jour, kind of like ADHD was in the 90s, then autism was like Asperger's especially. I think it's because it's not as black and white as if you have somebody that has classic autism, like it's very obvious. They're a lot of times they're not verbal at all. They have meltdowns. It's classical autism is a totally different beast, but Asperger's is another thing like ADHD where there's a lot of gray area, and you could fit a lot of people, maybe not as many people, but a lot of people into it who really are just maybe just don't fit some very cookie cutter standard. And then recently too, I think the DSM got rid of Asperger's, so now they either get lumped into high functioning autism, or now they don't have a label anymore, which is probably because there were a lot of kids being labeled as Asperger's or high functioning autism that were just normal kids who just maybe weren't, some popular, well-rounded, perfect kid that the probably narc parent wanted, so they had to label their child. So that's actually no longer in the DSM. But back to this bullshit article. So yeah, attention inconsistency, like, that doesn't describe everybody, right? And the anxiety responses, trouble sleeping. I mean, I do admit I used to have issues with that. Anxiety and sleep issues and stuff like that, but I got away from my mother. Magically, I don't have issues anymore. What a concept. I got out of my abuse environment, and that I don't have sleep problems anymore. Who would have thought? So, the third trait, which is like the biggest bullshit, I think, and there's another article on this, how ADHD ignites rejection-sensitive dysphoria. What the fuck even is that, The extreme emotional pain of perceived rejection is a feeling unique to people with ADHD. No, it isn't. This could be the result of, there could be thousands of reasons for this. Bullying in school, which sometimes after being bullied repeatedly, you become sensitive to it. Bullying at home, narc abuse, other anxiety disorders, other mood disorders. What a crock of shit. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria is extreme emotional sensitivity and emotional pain triggered by the perception, not necessarily the reality, that a person has been rejected, teased, or criticized by important people in their life. Gaslighting, anybody? Doesn't that sound like gaslighting? So it looks like the societal narcissism has crept into the psychiatry field, and I really feel like they're targeting abuse victims here, and they're trying to medicate as many people as they possibly can, and it is absolutely disgusting. RSD may also be triggered by a sense of failure or falling short, failing to meet either their own high standards or others' expectations. Narc abuse, anybody? Narcissistic parents can cause this? And then they're saying their own or others' expectations. So it's like they're trying to take what might be the result of abuse from someone else or authority figures and putting it back on the victim. Dysphoria is Greek for difficult to bear. That's nice. It's not that people with ADHD or wimps are weak. It's that the emotional response hurts them more than it does other people without the condition. So, who defines, what the condition is? It could hurt people with anxiety more, people with depression, bipolar, abuse victims. It's just... psychiatry... This whole field is one big gray area where everything lumps together. So, sometimes it's internalized, and it could lead to a mood disorder, or externalized, which results in acting out, anger management issues. So, people with ADHD cope with this huge emotional elephant. I love this dramatic language they use, this huge emotional elephant, in two main ways which are not mutually exclusive. One, they become people pleasers. Narc abuse victim, anybody? and two, they stop trying. You know, the interesting thing is, I read Carol McBride's book, Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers, and she has a whole chapter on this, and this, I'm not saying it can't be from ADHD, but this entire article is outlining what narc abuse victims go through, and it's absolutely scary. It's like they're trying to label all abuse victims with ADHD and medicate them and gaslight them. This, I know I might sound nuts, but this is right in front of your face, and just some people in society, they're commenting on Facebook how great this article is. It's like, you that fucking dumb, you know? And then I didn't comment because I'd probably get 20 people on there trying to rip my throat out. But yeah, Carol McBride in her book goes into two main coping mechanisms of children of narcissists. And those mechanisms were becoming, you know, sort of a Mary Marvel or an overachiever, or giving up. So that's right what they're basically, it's like, I swear to God, somebody from this magazine read that book or an article on what they were doing to narcissistic abuse victims and pathologizing abuse responses into ADHD. I swear this is right out of that book that I read. So the two coping mechanisms, which aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Some people use the pain of RSD to find adaptations and overachieve. Wow. Right out of the Narcissistic Mother's book. Wow. They strive for perfection. Oh my God. This is... I'm actually shocked reading that. I knew this article was pathologizing abuse victims, but this seems to be right out of the abuse literature. And they're trying to take these symptoms and force them into the ADHD label. It's absolutely astounding to me. How to treat RSD. Rejection sensitivity is part of ADHD. It's neurologic and genetic. Early childhood trauma makes it worse, but does not cause RSD. Oh, what a crock of shit. Oh my God. And then they go into the medications and what medication does what and all that, but I'm sure some of you as fellow abuse victims have seen this, and I'm not bad-mouthing anybody that might be in the psychiatry field, because I know it's not everybody, but this seems to be like gaslighting on a mass scale, and pathologizing. All the symptoms they're describing are classic narc abuse symptoms here, and they're trying to pathologize it and make you feel like you're somehow defective or you need to be medicated, and it's been what's done to me in my life, and it's like gaslighting on a mass scale, and it's absolutely disgusting. So just any opinions or personal experiences, you can leave that in the comments, and I'll see you soon.